top 10 fighters that deserve more love. In a sport full of hype trains and fraudulent prospects, we use the term overrated quite a lot. But what about the guys who have been steadily punching above their weight but can't seem to get the recognition they deserve? In an attempt to shine some light on some of the unsung heroes of the greatest sport in the world, we're counting down the top 10 UFC fighters who deserve more love. Number 10. Geoff Neal. Geoff Neal is the embodiment of firepower and versatility inside the octagon. He's got absolute hammers for fists, strong offensive and defensive wrestling, an extremely strong chin, and a willingness to go headfirst into the action no matter who's standing across from him. He showed exactly that in his last fight against the rising phenom Shavkat Rakhmonov. Even in a loss, the veteran did not disappoint, and he even had Shavkat hurt multiple times in the fight. Absolutely no one walked away from that fight thinking any less of him. But while that moment got him some love, his entire career has gone exactly the same way. He's got finishes over guys like Belal Muhammad and Vicente Luque, and has really only faltered against the absolute toughest of opponents. He's a fighter who seems willing to lay everything on the line every single time he competes, and so it's about time he gets the recognition he deserves. Number 9. Jared Cannonier. For his entire career, Jared Cannonier has seemed to fly under the radar of mainstream fans. And even after rising to the top of the middleweight division, racking up a ton of finishes along the way, he still can't seem to beat the allegations of being a boring fighter. But Cannonier's story is one of the craziest in UFC history. Beginning his journey as a heavyweight, he's demonstrated a remarkable ability to reinvent himself by dropping down in weight classes, first to light heavyweight and eventually to middleweight. With each descent, his devastating combination of speed and power has overwhelmed opponents, making him the only fighter in UFC history to score a finish at 265, 205, and 185. He's got a 5-round decision win over current middleweight champion Sean Strickland and ferociously beat down fellow top contenders Marvin Vettori and Derek Brunson. But while his performances rarely disappoint, his inability to break through with casual fans is most likely due to the fact that he's just a super nice guy who doesn't talk shit. So here's to hoping he takes a few classes at the McGregor School of Trash Talk and sees his stock rise among fans, cause if there's one guy who deserves it, it's Jared Cannonier. Number 8. Alexander Volkov. Alexander Volkov has been a mainstay in the heavyweight division ever since his debut, so it's a bit of a surprise that he's not more of a fan favorite. Standing at 6'7", the monster of a man is a technical master with an unmatchable ability to control distance. However, while he scored big wins early in his career against UFC legends Fabricio Verdum and Alistair Overeem, he stumbled under the brightest lights against the current and former interim champs Tom Aspinall and Cyril Gane. His inability to break through into the upper echelon of the heavyweight division and with his limited ability to speak English are the likely reasons for his lack of recognition. However, after dispatching Tai Tuivasa at UFC 293, he set himself up for one last run at the belt. And with the heavyweight division wide open at the moment, if he strings together some wins against the top 5, he could very well see his popularity skyrocket. Number 7. Rob Font. A veteran of the bantamweight division, Rob Font has been consistently exciting and competitive in the UFC's toughest and deepest weight class. Despite losses to renowned fighters like Chito Vera and Corey Sandhagen, Font never ceases to prove his worth every time he steps inside the cage. In his recent fight against Adrian Yanez, it looked as if he had been served up as the sacrificial lamb set to propel the young prospect to superstardom. But Font had other plans. He was quick on his feet and shocked the world, knocking Yanez out cold in the first round, reinforcing his status as a formidable contender. Font's losses have come almost entirely against top-tier guys in their absolute primes. But outside of this, he has notched significant wins against the likes of Sergio Pettis, Ricky Simon, Cody Garbrandt, and Marlon Moraes. Currently holding on to the 7th spot in the heavily stacked division, it's a wonder how Font hasn't amassed a legion of diehard fans. With his compelling fight style and dedication to the sport, he surely deserves them. Number 6. Giga Chikadze. 2 years ago, it would have been crazy to include Giga on a list like this. He was quickly rising in the featherweight ranks, with many assuming he would fight for the title in the very near future. However, things don't always go to plan, and after being on the receiving end of a relentless 5-round bludgeoning from Calvin Kattar in his first ever main event, he not only lost his momentum, but he also lost a ton of fans. Everyone was quick to jump ship following his worst performance inside the UFC octagon, and all of a sudden, one of the most highly touted prospects in the entire promotion was an afterthought. But after taking a year away from the sport in the wake of the beatdown, Giga returned against the always dangerous Alex Caceres and got himself back in the win column. Giga showed how dangerous he still is, breaking Caceres' arm in the first round, yet fans just can't seem to forget how badly that Kattar fight went and have seemingly written him off as a contender in the division. But while that fight was a serious litmus test that proved he still has a ton of work to do, let's not forget what he did to earn the hype he once had. Giga's kickboxing is a sight to behold, and his famous Giga kick is still one of the most lethal strikes any UFC fighter has in their arsenal. If he continues to grow as a mixed martial artist and addresses the defensive holes Kattar exploited, he should make his way right back to the top of the mountain and once again emerge as a contender in the division. So while he may have been overhyped at one point in time, jump back on the bandwagon now while there are still first-class seats. Number 5. Caio Borrello. Towards the top of this list are the fighters who truly have what it takes to become UFC champions one day. Caio Borrello is exactly that. The Brazilian middleweight who proudly reps one of his nation's fastest rising gyms, the Fighting Nerds, is an absolute force to be reckoned with. The Brazilian scored a UFC contract after winning 2 fights on Dana White's Contender Series, beating Bellator's standout Aaron Jeffrey in the process, and has no signs of slowing down since entering the UFC. He's put together 5 very impressive wins already, derailing multiple hype trains and positioning himself as one of the best unranked prospects in the middleweight division. But beyond his performances inside the octagon, he's also displayed an extremely high knowledge of the sport both online and in interviews. He was one of the few people on Earth who picked Sean Strickland to beat Israel Adesanya, and his pre-fight analysis proves just how well he understands martial arts.
Do Strickland com Poitin, o Strickland andando pra frente, marchando, começou a acertar uns jabs, né?
Undefeated inside the octagon, it's only a matter of time until the man with one of the gnarliest neck tattoos in the sport becomes a household name. After scoring the biggest win of his career over Abu Smughomedov, it's time to buy stock in The Natural because this kid is about to make some serious noise in the newly chaotic middleweight division. Number 4. Benoit Saint-Denis. After his arena-silencing head kick knocked out Matt Frivola at UFC 295, French Special Forces veteran Benoit Saint-Denis is finally getting the attention he deserves. But while he's got a number beside his name now, he took the hard route to get where he is today. He began his UFC career on a rocky note, suffering a brutal loss against Eliseu Zelensky dos Santos back in 2021 in a fight that Dana White called one of the worst beatings in recent memory. This fight is likely the reason why fans have been wary to board the hype train, but adversity is the anvil on which the greats are forged, and instead of letting that setback define him, he made the pivotal decision to drop down from welterweight to lightweight and began carving his way toward the top of the division ever since. In his new division, Saint-Denis has looked like an absolute world beater, racking up 5 wins with a 100% finish rate in just over 2 years' time. His ability to bounce back from such a violent beating has only made his recent run more impressive, and he's a prime example of why you should never count out a fighter after a rough start. After his vicious knockout of Matt Frivola, he's finally got the signature moment that may just skyrocket him to superstardom, so honestly, there's no better time than now to jump on the bandwagon. Number 3. Arman Tsarukyan. The 26-year-old Armenian lightweight has proved time and time again that he absolutely has what it takes to compete with the best in the world. However, the best in the world seem to want no part of him. He's relentlessly called out the likes of Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, and Michael Chandler, but heard radio silence back from the superstar vets who seem unwilling to put their rankings on the line against the up-and-coming standout. Like a few others on this list, his most impressive moment actually comes in a loss, this time to Islam Makhachev, who he lost a razor-thin decision to in one of the best grappling matchups in recent history. Arman's ability to fight off Islam's attacks on the ground showed just how well-rounded he is and actually played a massive role in helping Alexander Volkanovski build a game plan for his first fight with the lightweight champ. Though not excessively flamboyant, Arman's foundational skills, especially his grappling, make him a nightmare matchup for just about anyone. And at only 26 years old, he has what it takes to grow into one of the best lightweights in the world. Tsarukyan has been willing to fight anyone, anywhere, and he finally gets to put his money where his mouth is. With a massive main event coming up against Beneil Dariush, Tsarukyan is primed to make the massive jump he's been waiting for. At best, a win over Dariush puts him next in line for a title shot, and at the very least, it gives him the star power to make fights against the biggest names in the division. Number 2, Mike Malott. Coming off the biggest win of his career at UFC 289, Malott is still being criminally slept on. In his first 4 fights in the UFC, he's racked up 4 wins and 4 stoppages, but the most impressive part is that he's only absorbed 23 total strikes. Not significant strikes, total strikes. That's eerily similar to the first 4 fights of superstar Khamzat Chimaev. And just like Chimaev, Malott also has a 100% finish rate in his 10 pro wins, with only one of those fights making it out of the first round. He is extremely well-rounded with solid striking, great wrestling, and a very dangerous submission game. But don't take it from us. His recent submission victory over Adam Fugit actually caught the attention of undisputed BJJ GOAT Gordon Ryan, who slid into the Canadian's DMs and made an entire post about how impressive Mullet's guillotine was. But Gordon Ryan isn't the only decorated grappler who's all in on the Canadian. He was recently seen training with Henry Cejudo ahead of his match with longtime welterweight gatekeeper Neil Magny at UFC 297. With an entire country behind him, he looks to defend home soil once again, and this time get himself a ranking in the process. Number 1, Aljamain Sterling. At number 1, we have the man who may go down as the most underappreciated fighter in UFC history. The Funk Master, Aljamain Sterling. It seems crazy to include a decorated former champion on this list, but when you zoom out on everything Alja's done in his career so far, it's pretty obvious why he's number 1 on our list. While he's collected nearly every accolade there is in the sport, he just can't seem to get a grasp on the hearts of the fans. Throughout his 27-fight career, Alja has cemented himself as the best bantamweight in UFC history and arguably the greatest bantamweight of all time. But even with the resume of an all-time great, he remains a contentious figure among fans, almost entirely due to the way he won his title in the first place. After former champion Piotr Yan was disqualified for an illegal knee, fans were quick to criticize Sterling for accepting the belt via disqualification and accused him of embellishing the injury it caused. Alja suddenly became the most hated UFC champion there ever was, and even after doing what everyone said he couldn't, defeating Yan in the rematch and successfully defending the belt against TJ Dillashaw and Henry Cejudo, Alja just couldn't seem to shake the haters. The guy was literally booed by hometown fans during a title defense against Henry Cejudo, who is quite frankly the least likable figure in combat sports. He's faced some pretty unfair criticism for everything from his remarks to his performances to his unwillingness to fight his best friend, which really really doesn't seem too unreasonable. And while he has said some questionable things in the past, it's hard to justify the majority of the criticism. To put the icing on the cake, Dana White clearly hates the guy and is doing a terrible job of trying to hide it. So, whether you hate him or not, the truth is that Sterling is an all-time great, and it's honestly sad to see someone so talented be so mistreated. Hopefully you found your new favorite fighter, and if not, check out our list of the top 10 biggest disappointments in UFC history.